Let's bring in Chris Stigall.
He is Chris Stigall.
Chris Stigall.
I'm joined now by Chris Stigall,
host of the Chris Stigall Show.
So let's bring in talk radio host Chris Stigall.
Also, his podcast is a must-listen every day. Chris Stigall Show podcast.
And host of the Chris Stigall Show.
Let's bring in Chris Stigall.
Please welcome Chris Stigall.
The Chris Stigall podcast is presented by usmedicalplan.com. Save big money monthly and get better health coverage at usmedicalplan.com.
Hey there, thanks a lot for downloading the Chris Stigall Show podcast. Glad to have you along today. Thanks a lot for giving this a 5-star review and a written review at Apple Podcasts or Spotify. If you get an opportunity to do it, it's always helpful to the operation here. We're grateful that you do that and let other people know about the podcast. You have helped this thing grow by leaps and bounds with your support over the years. We're so thankful. And we also can't do it without your support of our sponsors. And the fact that we have great sponsors in the podcast means everything to the operation. So if you enjoy listening to the podcast, if you don't mind rating it, and if you don't mind supporting great sponsors like our title sponsor, John Ruhlman. John has been with us now for a few years, and he is absolutely the best when you're looking for the best prices and the best coverage in health insurance. usmedicalplan.com is his website. Now, all you need to do is set aside, let's call it a half an hour. Reach out, usmedicalplan.com, or call 877-410-4321 and tell them what you're paying right now and what you think about your coverage right now. Or maybe you have some questions. You're just not really happy with your current health insurance situation. They'll talk you through your options. And here's the thing. At U.S. Medical Plan, they know 100 different private health insurance companies. So they're going to get you the best possible price and never going to skimp on coverage. I know a lot of people think, well, if it's cheaper, it's not going to be as good a coverage. Not true. In fact, what you'll find when you work with U.S. Medical Plan is oftentimes you're paying more. You're paying much more than you should be for health insurance for not as great a coverage. 877-410-4321 or usmedicalplan.com. I know there's much more important things to talk about, like a teetering economy, like the Dow plunging 1,000 points yesterday. And as Ari Fleischer said, and I thought it was pretty good, he said, listen, this is really, in terms of metrics, if you're somebody who's a market investor and a market player, I mean, other than retirement accounts, which I guess are tied to the market, I don't play individual stocks, so I don't sit and watch the stock market. I know some of you do, not begrudging you if you do. But anybody that I've ever talked to in investments says one of the biggest things, or people that manage other people's money, one of the biggest things they say they struggle with is trying to convince people to walk away from their investments and stop paying so much attention to it. Just leave it be. You're going to have to let it ride unless, if you're of a certain age and you're waiting for a quick return and you don't have a lot of time, maybe a different deal. I don't know. But, people in their 20s, 30s, 40s, I've always heard, put the money in there and walk away from it. Don't sit there and stare at it like a ticker. So it took a little dip yesterday, and Ari Fleischer said, you people that are in the market, you must not be very familiar with how this thing works. Because really, in terms of downturns, this isn't that big a deal. Look, I'm not excusing the market going soft, but I am telling you that 50 days into a new administration with a new agenda and a new way forward, this is not going to be easy. All right? This was never supposed to be easy. Nobody told you it was going to be easy. Anybody who did, or any suggestion that it was going to be an overnight switch flip, wasn't telling you the truth, quite frankly. I never went into this thinking that Donald Trump was going to be able to reverse inflation overnight. His loving embrace of tariffs has been pretty aggressive. I will say I don't think I anticipated the aggressive use of tariffs, and I know that's off-putting to a lot of people in the business economy. Trump is supposed to have a business roundtable, I guess as soon as today or tomorrow, to kind of quell some fears. Look, I'm going to be flatly honest with you. I hear a lot of people in the business community. I was on a call yesterday with some people in the business world, from the business sector, the investment sector, who are grumbling that they don't think this tariff agenda of Donald Trump's is very targeted or focused, and that it's just a big mess. I'm just passing along what I hear. I don't know that I share that point of view. I don't know that I see any evidence with 50 days in and a brand new launch of some tariffs that, and even a market downturn, I'm still not confident that folks, this economy is propped up on funny money. Someone on X said it well yesterday, And, in fact, I reposted it. Let me hang on here. I didn't intend to talk about this, but let me go ahead and do it now. Because I thought two of these posts were excellent just as I was headed off to slumber yesterday, and I shared them. First of all, Ari said, for everyone going crazy about the stock market, the Dow is down 1.1% for the year, and the S&P 500 down 4.3%. If you can't handle what's tantamount to a small swing, you shouldn't be in the market. Trump and Musk need to focus on the long term. No need to be deterred by short-term market movements. That's Ari Fleischer. Couldn't agree more. Then another one, and I thought this one was even the more important one. If we're having a recession, this is from somebody called Wall Street Mav on X. If we're having a recession over a decline in government spending, and that's what the sales pitch is going to be, that if we cut government, see what Trump's done, see what Elon's doing, see this disruption, the economy was humming along fine. They will have you believing before this is over that Joe Biden's economy was going great. And you're just too stupid to understand how great it was. And now here we are, and Trump's here, and look at how he's making everything suck with Elon and Doge. That's what they're trying to get the country to believe. But to this poster's point on X, if we're having a recession over a decline in government spending, then the GDP wasn't real to begin with. The United States government has a $2 trillion annual deficit. $2 trillion annual deficit. That's basically $2 trillion of artificial gross domestic product that is being funded by more debt. Removing $2 trillion of GDP is where the actual economy is. Removing $2 trillion is where the actual economy is. Now, how much money has Elon Musk pledged to remove in waste, fraud, and abuse? How much has he believed he's identified? He believes he can get to what number? He used a very specific number. $2 trillion is the answer. So here again, taking waste, fraud, and abuse to the tune of about $2 trillion out of the government, and the hissing and the writhing and the screeching and the job loss and the blah, 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 it tells you this was not a sound, structurally significant economy. It was weak and wobbly, and it was built on funny money. It was built on borrowed money, printed dollars that aren't real. Now, this is a bit nuanced in that I realize there are some of you who have fallen victim to the idea that the cuts have to start right this second with the CR that we're talking about voting on as soon as today. That, as much as I understand some of you believe the cutting should start right this minute, you're talking about a previously negotiated spending bill that will require Republicans to work with Democrats in order to get to a place to pass that bill. You will have to negotiate something with Democrats to get that done, which means it will never get done, which means there will be a government shutdown because that's what the Democrats want. And so for you people that are saying, screw it, we got to do something, and we got to do something right now, shut the damn government down if we got to make these cuts. You are not seeing the long term. You're thinking in a short-sighted way. I go back to this post. A $2 trillion annual budget deficit is what we're running. Right, Stigall, you just said we got to do something about the spending. Yes. But in order to do it, you have to start from the ground level. And the Republicans, with Doge and Elon, can start from the ground level. You're talking about attacking last year's budget that was already negotiated, debated on, and put into a package. You want to blow that up, shut down the government by Friday, and make Republicans fight with Democrats and negotiate with Democrats over last year's numbers. Folks, that's just foolish. That's politically foolish. We don't have that kind of time. And if the government, quote, shuts down on Friday, who's going to hang? Whose neck is that going to be hung around? Of course the Republicans and Trump and Elon and chaos. So get this CR, I'm back to this again for another day, get this CR out of the way, as much as I know you don't like it. But look, there are people who have never passed a CR, never voted for a CR, and they're all saying, I get Trump's strategy here. We're going forward to the fall. $2 trillion is what Elon he believes he can identify by 2026, July 2026, by the midterms. $2 trillion he believes he can get cut. And the Republicans believe they can craft a budget that reflects those cuts. You're talking about really meaningful codified into law from the base level of negotiation this year, cuts. But you got to let Elon do the work. You got to let the Republicans codify it into a bill. And we've got to get there. And you got to get past this week to get there. This is Trump's counsel. And again, I say, if you don't trust Trump, if you think Trump's just lost his mind, fine. I'm not going to try to talk you out of it. But this is Trump's position as well. Trump is telling all of these House and Senate Republicans, get this over with, get this CR out of the way so we can do the Doge cutting. Now, meanwhile, the markets, they're starting to go wobbly because it's exposing how soft the economy is. Back to this poster's point, we basically have an artificial economy. Of course we do. We had billions and billions and billions of dollars pumped into it courtesy of the COVID economy over the last few years. This economy has never been real for the last several, as a matter of fact. It's why it seemed so strange that businesses were shutting down right and left. Nobody was going to work, yet everybody was still buying things. And purchase power was still there for the upper echelon. How was that possible? Because all that free printed money was out there floating around. We're drunk with government money that is not real. Government doesn't make anything, folks. The people make things. A productive economy makes things. And we at present do not have a productive economy. Trump's tariff agenda is trying to bring all of this commerce back. Factory work, the development of new businesses, offshore businesses, car companies, bring them back, incentivize them to come back home and make their products here and hire Americans to do it here. He has a plan for an economic engine that unfortunately is not going to be able to warm up in 50 days, maybe not even in 6 months. Also, if you don't pass this CR, you know what else we can't get to? Real tax cuts. And you got to do that. We have to have not just reduced spending, but we have to have real market aggressive tax cuts. Those can't happen unless we get past this CR. Look, this is a mess. It is a mess, but it's a mess Trump inherited. It's a mess that Trump won 77 million votes to fix. But now we got to let him cook, man. We got to let him fix it. And he's not going to be able to do it in 51 days. Take a breath. It's the Stigall Show. And let me tell you something else. We're going to see more of this agitation stuff going on, too. It's important that you keep in mind what's happening. We're trying to go through a real fundamental change here, which means the American left hissing and writhing is not going to have much left to do but just create chaos. And it's unsettling. And I think all of us should be girded for that. The entire Democrat playbook and their cheat book, their funding, from Act Blue to USAID, Democrats have been exposed. Their spigot of funding has been turned off. And there's a good chance we're going to see some short-term chaos because of it. Couple that with X. Look at the attack on X yesterday as Exhibit A. The attack on X was not an accident. The timing was not an accident. Billionaire entrepreneur and Doge chief Elon Musk claiming yesterday that X went dark as the result of a massive cyber attack that originated in, well, I'll let you hear it from him if you didn't hear it yesterday. He went on Larry Kudlow's show, cut number 951, and he was asked about this. Larry did a great interview with Elon, incidentally. Asked him what he thinks was going on there with X. Take a listen.
There was a cyber attack on X today, which shut it down and may have been foreign sourced. Yes. It's a big story. You want to give us a moment on that?
Well, we're not sure exactly what happened, but there was a massive cyber attack to try to bring down the X system with IP addresses originating in the Ukraine area.
Aha. What do we mean? What do we glean from that? Cyber attacks originating from Ukraine. Can't imagine why that would be. Again, sowing chaos is what the left does better than anybody else. They're a machine about it. And what we know is there is a huge interest in this country to see money continuing to flow to Ukraine without end. Donald Trump wants to do what? Bring that to a close. A bunch of leftists got in little Zelensky's ear when he came here and visited a couple of weeks ago and said, hey, you go in there and you rough Trump up a little bit. That went poorly. Trump threw him out of the White House and said, call me when you're ready to talk. And, of course, he did yesterday by saying, I'm sorry. Can we talk? This chaos. And so I'm sure they've, I'm not suggesting, I can't prove it. I'm not suggesting the hiccup came directly from the government of Ukraine or anything like that. But there are obviously interests that are very, very angry at what's happening here. This is we went through this in 2016. That wasn't supposed to happen either. And what did 2016 give us? I wasn't with you prior to, at least on the national show. I was not with you prior to this. But if you were listening to my show on Philadelphia's AM 990 The Answer when I was doing that show, we talked about this. That this isn't going to be like Trump. If Trump, I used to say, if Trump should be victorious, don't think they're just going to lay down and quit. Democrats never lay down and quit. As we've talked, they've struggled to find a message. They can't figure out how to make guys like Elon and Trump and this Doge effort unpopular because it's not unpopular. So they're going to go to a plan B at some point, and we may be watching it now, which is let's just start sowing chaos. And they've done it before. Remember pallets of bricks being delivered on street corners and George Floyd riots? Here's another exhibit in my point today. This arrest of this Mohammed Khalil yesterday in Colombia. They're going to make this a thing. Hey, hey, ho, ho. And then all of a sudden we're going to hear about Trump rounding up, like a bunch of Nazis, rounding up people that don't agree with him. This guy is an anti-Semite. He's a virulent, non-citizen anti-Semite. They're going to make him out to be Martin Luther King by the time this thing is over. The chaos is on purpose. They have to have something to talk about. They don't want to talk about Act Blue. And they don't want to talk about USAID. And they don't want to talk about a phony economy. 9:52. Here's Elon talking about this very thing with Larry Kudlow. Take a listen.
That is also a mechanism by which the Democrats attract and retain illegal immigrants by essentially paying them to come here and then turning them into voters.
Yes.
So this is why the Democrats are so upset about the situation, because they're losing. If we turn off this gigantic money magnet for illegal immigrants, then they will leave and they will lose voters.
So, and if you turn off the gigantic money spigot, you lose activist money and you lose your funding for all your Marxist organizing efforts. This is a big job. It's hard. And the people that are entrenched and benefiting from this are probably decades in the making. This is a big, heavy lift Trump's engaged in. Again, patience is required.
And that's it. I mean, they're waiting for... the left is pretty much... all of these projects, all these pet projects over the years that they've had just funded endlessly, yes, through our tax dollars, I mean, they're going to dry up, right? I mean, we're nearing the end of this. And it's just amazing to me that we've come this far. I don't know. Back in the control room, what do you guys think? Should we move this CR in order to get to the next step, right? Do we move it forward, get to where we need to be, and then let Doge do what it does? And do you think at that time that there will be substantial cuts in the system? Do you think we need to, let me pose the question again, do you think we need to move this CR bill forward in order to get to the next step where Elon can start cutting away, and then we stop seeing funding to Planned Parenthood, USAID, all of these things, Act Blue, that the left has done all these years? What do you think?
Well, I think you pretty much outlined it, Eddie. And Chris, I think, outlined it this morning better too, is what is the alternative? Because the alternative is a government shutdown. And plainly stated, that's obviously not good. And who's going to take the blame for that? Whether or not it's justified or not, it's the Republicans. And it's going to be detrimental, and you can't, that's just the bottom line. You cannot have a government shutdown. So I think you're right. If there's anyone who has any kind of ideological opposition to it, we know there are plenty of members of the Republican Party that have opposition to it, well, they're going to have to suck it up and take it this time. And then I think, again, that seems to be a decent strategy going forward as a unified front, saying, look, we're going to have to, take our medicine here, so to speak, maybe take a CR that we don't want, but moving forward, we're going to be more of a unified front in actually cutting spending, getting rid of, wasteful contracts, things of that nature. It seems to be the best plan. Because, again, the alternative is shutting down the government, and that's not going to be good for anyone.
Yep, no, and that's pop-up Paulie D'Amelio on the other side there. Thank you for that, Paulie. Now, do you think Doge will actually get to, well, at first, now Trump has posed, he actually went on Truth Social last night, and now he is looking to primary Thomas Massie. And I actually want to, 855 Stigall, 855-784-4255. I want to get your thoughts on that. Do you think Thomas Massie is a problem here in saying that he's going to be a no vote? There can't be many votes peeled away from the Republicans in passing this CR. I think he can only afford to lose, one or two, Speaker Johnson? So are you with Trump on primarying Thomas Massie, or are you hold the line conservative? Because that's the thing. As we move through a process like this, it's everyone wants to be the most conservative person in the room. Everyone wants to be the smartest person in the room as far as, this puts this much money out the door, and this is something that Trump and Johnson have been against for gosh knows how long, right? So with Thomas Massie being a problem, now it's been posed from Trump saying, well, if you're going to stand in the way of our agenda, we're going to look to primary you. And do you agree with that sentiment? Is that something that we have an appetite for at this juncture, or do we try and find the votes? Because the Democrats, here's the funny thing, as we get up against this shutdown, the Democrats have already said in one voice that they're not going to help the Republicans pass this CR. So I have no idea, and even, just listen to some news reports on the way in this morning, it's already being posited by the media that it's just like, the Democrats aren't going to support it, yet they don't blame them in any way, in the way that they blame Republicans. So, Chris how are you? Welcome back.
I'm fine, guys. Sorry, I apologize. Had a little technical glitch here in my studio, so thank you, Fast Eddie, for carrying the program there for a minute. What did I miss? Did I miss anything good?
Chris, do you think Thomas Massie is a problem here? Because you and I, we talk about this a lot. So Trump brings it up last night that says, all right, well, if you're going to stand in the way of this, then we're going to primary you. But there's also those people, conservative hardliners out there that say just like, no, Thomas Massie is exactly right. So I was, looking for your thoughts on that.
Yeah, this is, I struggle to disparage Thomas Massie because I understand what he's saying, but I think he is short-sighted here. Typically, what he's arguing, I have understood in the past. What he's arguing in the past with a House that typically does not deliver, 100% true. What Thomas Massie is complaining about is 100% true. I do see this one as different. Now, I know what this audience is saying. You're saying, Chris, I always hear that this is different. You always say this one's going to be different. Well, all I can tell you is that this time there's Elon Musk, and that's what makes this one different. And I can't promise you that, I can't swear to you that this House and this Senate, these Republicans are going to get the job done. I can't swear on a stack of Bibles. I'll be the first one to come here and say, well, yet again, they've lied to us and they let us down. But Elon has been clear. He's here for just a finite amount of time. He's at great personal cost to him. I'm giving you my best for a while, and then I'm going to leave. So we have to, as a bit of a leap of faith here, do something that I know Thomas Massie doesn't want to do. But this is the one time that I would say I am willing to set aside what I believe is a principled fight like Massie's and actually trust that Trump and Elon are going to get the job done. I have to trust that. I can't do anything more but ask you to trust Trump and Elon. If they let us down, then they let us down. And I'll come here and I'll say, wow. And by the way, it won't have been Trump and Elon that let us down. You know who it will be? The people that always get away with never having to explain themselves. The House. The House Republicans will have let us down. If this fall a meaningful budget does not come out full of really substantial cuts, upwards of maybe $1 trillion or more, if we don't get that from Republicans, okay, come back here, we'll talk, and I'll say we were let down. We were lied to, and we'll never trust this process again. We'll never vote for another CR again, and we can fight. But the process that Elon is going through right now at great personal cost to him, I have to trust, and it cannot be implemented at this moment with this CR. That's what people don't understand. Procedurally, there are procedures here that people just don't, and I'm not castigating you for not understanding it. I'm just explaining that we're not starting from scratch with a brand new budget. And that's what we would have to do with this CR, which you really can't do because it's sort of the extension of spending that's already been committed. You can't start all over and just pull stuff out of a budget with a CR. You can't do it. I mean, you could, but you have to literally start all over, which means reconferencing with Democrats and negotiating with them. And as one of the Freedom Caucus guys said yesterday, I don't want to negotiate with Democrats now. Let's get this out of our way and move on to something that we actually control entirely. This makes sense to me. And I realize for a lot of other people, you don't have the patience for it. And you don't believe pass this CR, kick this can, and the next time we'll do it better. I understand. Once bitten, twice shy. I get it. I'm just telling you, I believe this time it's different. Okay? Let me give you a little of Elon on the way out the door. This is number 956 and what he had to say about the money and the fraud.
There was a report issued by the GAO, the Government Accountability Office, last year. So during the Biden administration, which estimated the federal government fraud to be $500 billion. So just to be clear, that's not a Trump administration thing, that's a Biden administration thing.
So there you go. But you got to fix it. You know, it's why this is the best team in the business. Springing into action when your host is taken out like a limpy gazelle. I appreciate it. Well done, Eddie. Pop-Up Paulie, Alex, G-Love, BK, the whole team springing into action there when the show goes down a little bit. But anyway, glad to have you back. I think we're in order. I think we're soldiering on. It's, look, it's chaos week. That's the theme. X went down yesterday. People suspect, when this show starts to have troubles fast, Eddie, they start to expect chicanery. When I start getting a little too close to the bone in my cutting commentary, people believe that's when the show starts to have trouble.
No, Chris, remember every time we would speak about during the COVID years, I mean, all those COVID shows, every time we'd have technical problem, they're taking you off, see? It's the deep state.
That's right. It's deep state chicanery. Anyway, we have overcome, and we're back in action here today. Our telephone number, 855-STIGAL, if you want to weigh in today. I appreciate everybody carrying the load here while we figured it out. Thanks, Ed. The point I also wanted to make a little while ago before I was so rudely interrupted. Do you want 20,000 factory jobs in Indiana, or do you want 20,000 jobs tied to USAID in Washington, D.C.? Sincere question. Ed, what's better? I mean, if you polled 10 people on the street today, 10,000, 20,000 jobs at USAID paid for by taxpayer dollars, or 20,000 jobs at a new Honda plant in Indiana, which do you think most Americans would say is better for us?
Most Americans would choose the Honda plant in Indiana, Chris.
Yeah, and why? Do you know why? I mean, how do you answer that? Why is that at a base level? I'm not going for any particular answer, but like, why does that make sense?
Well, Chris, I mean, that means that's another product made in America. That's new job creation. A Honda Civic is something that people are going to want for the foreseeable future. So it's a good industrial job. Like that, you talk about bringing jobs and made in America. There you go. It solves both.
It's a tangible product. They are making physical, tangible things that they are selling at a profit and then paying a workforce. Government has none of that, folks. And I think sometimes we forget that. And I love you government employees that listen to this show. Please don't get mad at me. Don't shoot the messenger. I am not attacking you for working at the federal government. I am not attacking you if that's how you make your living. I don't suggest you're a worthless scum-sucking pig or something. That's not my point. My point is, mathematically, when you have millions of Americans drawing an income from something that makes nothing, hear me, government produces nothing. They don't make anything. They only take. And from what do they take? Us, those of us that work in the private sector. So it's not an attack on you, but the fact of the matter is we cannot have a government that is a giant employment agency paying people, and not just paying them through their career, but paying them pensions as well and paying their health care as well, while in the labor market, it continues to shrink and shrink and shrink. Jobs leave the country. Nobody has like a decent income in the country, but everybody that's working off the taxpayer is getting fat city. Remember the stat I shared with you last week that said 40 to 50% of the consumption in this country right now is identified, I think, in the Wall Street Journal. I got to go find that stat again. It was a stunning one. 40 to 50% of the consumption going on in this country right now is being done by people in the top 10% income brackets. We're getting to a place, a dangerous place in this country where the very, very wealthy are propping up the rest of us. The very wealthy. Through their purchases, through their taxes. And that's unsustainable. That can't last. And the government can't become just a giant employment agency because every other factory, every other job, every other company, every other entity that makes something shuts down because they can't survive in this inflated economy. And the only thing that can survive is the government and government jobs. And folks, that should be simple math to most of us. You can't have that. You need a Honda plant in Indiana with hundreds, maybe thousands of good-paying jobs making a product that the consumer buys. You know, the biology of the economy. It's circular that way. But what we're developing right now is this bloated, top-heavy, taxpayer-funded everything. All of the handouts, all of the... from Medicare to Medicaid to every other social welfare program to many millions of jobs, all being funded by the taxpayer, whose real jobs out there actually making something are vanishing. So Trump is trying to turn around this battleship arrangement. It is huge. It's Herculean what he's trying to achieve. And it can't happen overnight. But what can happen overnight, of course, is shrinking government. And that's going to be the tough part, is watching government shrink while we try to grow the economy, which won't happen as fast.
Well, the numbers don't lie. Balance of Nature and the impact it's making every single day is astounding. You see the numbers for yourself on their website at balanceofnature.com. Listen to the stats from Balance of Nature, their worldwide success. You ready for this? More than 1,000 success stories reported every single month. Hundreds of thousands of customers worldwide. Millions of orders delivered each day. Billions. Yes, with a B, billions of fruits and vegetable supplements consumed by people who've decided to start living a better life. We take them at the house. I've got them up in the cabinet. Take them every day. There's only one number that's missing out of all of this, and that's you. Do what I did. Add yourself to these numbers. Start taking Balance of Nature. They're whole food supplements, like so many others around the world. And here's another number that'll get your attention. 35%. What is that? You use my name, Chris, as your discount code. You'll get 35% off, plus free shipping and a money-back guarantee. You got to use that discount code, Chris. 800-2468-751. And use the discount code, Chris, or order online, balanceofnature.com. Again, discount code, Chris, to get that 35% off, plus free shipping. Hey, inflation still remains high, uncertainty clawing at the door, and wisdom says you got to secure what lasts. That's the 2025 1-ounce Silver Eagle from my friends at Global Coin. The U.S. Mint shines the storm with this flawless MS-70 coin, and you can get it through Global Coin. This is a company that I personally use and have trusted. It's not a gamble. This is authentic silver. You can hold a real legacy asset. Global Coin stands for expertise and experience. No games whatsoever, just real value. Call 888-560-3125 and lock in this pristine MS-70 masterpiece. Just $49. Free shipping and no sales tax. Everything else pretty shaky, economically speaking, but this is an asset that will not disappear. They back it with a 30-day return policy, too. Trust, not negotiable, to Global Coin. Visit shopglobalcoin.com/Stigall or 888-560-3125. Inflation won't wait. Supplies won't last. 888-560-3125.
Congressman Scott Perry, I am so thrilled that he was able to join us today on what is a very, very important week. He represents the 10th Congressional District of Pennsylvania. He is a great, great friend of this show. And we dialed him up today, I believe, yes, because we wanted to speak with him very specifically about this CR, and so we bring him in here. If we do have him, yes? Am I mistaken? I don't see him, but here. Anyway. There he is. Okay, I didn't. Scott, I'm sorry. I was waiting to see your mug pop up, and it wasn't there. So sorry about that. Anyway, glad to have you here. Can you just, before I, pop off with my 2 cents about it, I would love for you to kind of paint the picture, set the scene. Where are we as a potential vote looms on this CR? And I want you to keep in mind, as I know, there are many people in this audience and on X who believe that something aggressive should happen in spending right now with this CR. So mindful that you have constituents, and I have an audience, members of it, who want something done with this CR rather than just pass it as is because they feel like the House has betrayed us before. What makes this different? That's a lot, so take it away, please.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, and that's the important context of this, because generally I would agree with your audience members that say don't ever do this, which is why I think I voted for one CR so far my entire time in Congress, and that deal was so good we couldn't believe it, but we just, there were personality issues that we couldn't get past. But in this context, look, I think you got to use the old adage, you can get a lot done if you don't care who gets the credit for it, right? So I'm in a position I have to vote for a continuing resolution which continues all the spending on garbage crap that I voted against in the past that I hate. But suddenly I'm going to go vote for it. Why? Well, let's talk about the why. The context is this. President Trump is now in the Oval Office. He's leading the country. He's got Russ Vought over at the Office of Management and Budget and Elon Musk over at DOGE. And so as long as we keep the lights on, they will continue to work and cut the spending that I've always wanted to be cut whenever I voted on anything. And the reason I voted no is because it wasn't cut. But they can't do it unless the government remains open so that they can get to the agencies, get through the computer systems, and continue to whack this stuff off. So that's kind of like number one. This is a first down. The real game here, the real goal is the reconciliation package. But we're just gonna take we're gonna lose the momentum, quite honestly and quite literally, if we allow Democrats to take over this process. Because if we don't pass this continuing resolution and the government doesn't stay open, the whole narrative changes. And if we do pass it with Democrat votes, of course, the spending goes up. So let's talk about the other part, the nuts and bolts of this thing. So usually the CR just continues all the spending and the crap that I hated from the last time I voted no. This CR does some of that, which President Trump and Elon Musk and Russ Vought over at OMB they're gonna fix that stuff once they get it. They're not going to spend the money on all the garbage that we hate. In the meantime, this CR actually cuts and freezes spending. For the first time in my time in Congress, we're actually going to cut spending and freeze spending only for 6 months. But, you got to take the first step in these things. It's never happened in my time in Congress. I don't know if it's ever happened at all that we actually have less spending. No earmarks. Zero earmarks. All those special programs that everybody wants, they demand to get their votes for, they're out. And that's billions of dollars, by the way. That's not like just a couple $100 million here for stupid programs. That's billions of dollars every single time, that earmark thing. And then we're taking money. There's a slush fund in the Commerce Committee. We're taking that money, that and the expanded IRS money, and paying for more beds so Homan can get more people that are in the country out of the country illegally while we work on the touchdown, the real play, which is the reconciliation budget, which isn't done yet. So, look, do I love this? No, I don't love this. But Kevin McCarthy brought us on this road a long time ago, and this is where we find ourselves. Would I like to rewind the clock and fix it? I would, but, I'm not Superman. I can't fly around the earth and spin it the other way and rewind the clock. I got to deal with what's right in front of me. And so this is the best of the circumstances this is literally the best thing that we can do because our options are three, right? We can either have a shutdown and then use Democrat votes to get out of it, which is going to be really expensive. We can do this CR and let Elon Musk and Donald Trump and Russ Vogt, who we trust, do the right thing. Or we can,
pass it.
There's really nothing else you can do. Those are kind of the options right there.
Yeah.
Like we can't go back.
Let me ask you this, Congressman. Sorry to interrupt you, but I'm just because I got your points here and I think they're important. This CR cuts and freezes spending for 6 months. That is important. Yes. That's an important point. It cuts and freezes spending. This is not an increase in spending. This CR, true?
No, that's correct. It's because everything is offset. Like, for instance, we're going to add more money to home, and where's that money coming from? There's a slush fund in the Commerce Department. We're taking that. We're taking money from the IRS expansion. So anything that is increased in it is offset, and it's offset more than it's increased. So it's actually a reduction in spending.
Okay, and no earmarks is a big deal. Now, there is still, here's the point, there is still garbage in it. You've said so, you know that, you acknowledge it. And this is the point. Garbage. This is what I want everybody to understand. You acknowledge there's garbage in it. You acknowledge there's stuff that needs to be pulled out. You're saying Trump, Elon, Vogt, they've told you, okay, just get this garbage out of the way, and we'll handle kind of, if you will, clawing it back. We will see to it that it's held rather than spent. Just get it to us. Is that what you're saying they're saying? And so, with that, I'm sorry to keep pressing on this, but I just procedurally, can you explain to this audience why someone like you, who would like to see this stripped of this garbage, it is not timely, it's not fruitful, it's not useful right now to go deal with it at this moment, because Democrats then come into play, correct?
Yeah, that's the problem. If we have to rely on Democrat votes, so the options are continuing resolution or the appropriations process. Well, it's not done. Like, the House passed half the bills, so we didn't even get our work done. The Senate passed 0 bills. So doing this through the appropriations process, where you have the votes and this passes and that fails, that's not an option. So we have to do it through this. There's only one way to keep the government open and to keep it funded, and it's through this continuing resolution, which has all this crap in it. But we sat down. I sat down personally with the president last week. We went through the accounts. He's not going to pay for this stuff. We're not going to be paying for like Planned Parenthood and all that other crap that typically people like me don't want to vote for. It's just who's going to not be paying for it. I trust the president when he says, and Russ and Elon, when they say, we're not paying for that crap. But what it does do is it keeps the momentum going for look, the Democrats, for the first time in my life, are praying for a shutdown. They're signaling they want a shutdown. And, the only reason they want that is to stop President Trump and the momentum. You know what they want for their votes for a CR? They say we have to defund Doge. I don't really know exactly what that means, because I don't even know if Doge costs any money, but they essentially want us to stop Doge, and they also want us to force the president to hire back every single person and reinstate every single program that they have taken an axe to. So, that's who we're working with. That's the cost of allowing them and getting them to vote for something. So since we don't agree with that, they won't vote for it, and which means that all of us have to vote for it. So again, I don't love the fact that it's going to be on my tab that I voted for this stuff, but it doesn't matter as long as I don't care who gets the credit for actually not spending it, because at the end of the day, it's going to hit the spending wall of Donald Trump, Russ Vogt, and Elon Musk. And so the money's not going to be spent anyhow, which is isn't that the goal? I thought that was the goal.
Is this, I've just got about 30 seconds, Congressman, is this going to pass? We know Massey's already a hard no. I've heard maybe one or two others that have said, I'm not hard no, I could be convinced, but I'm kind of a no. Is this going to pass if it comes to a vote on the House?
I think, look, I'm very optimistic. I think it will. And I get the posturing. Everything about Washington, D.C. is leverage. So the people that are saying, well, I'm a maybe, I'm a lean no, but I might be yes, they want something. I don't know what it is, but they want something, and they're leveraging their vote to get whatever that something is. And And so, hopefully, since they're all on our side of the aisle, it's something good. Like what I want is less spending. What I want is less regulation, less programs. It's not they shouldn't want. If they want an earmark, then they need to join the other party.
Congressman, you're the best. We can always count on you to come off the bench and explain it to us so that we can better understand it. We'll watch carefully. Hope we have you back very, very soon. Congressman Scott Perry, Pennsylvania 10. Thank you, sir. More of the show in just a minute. Oh, by the way, I'm sorry, we've been so busy this morning. I didn't get a chance to mention this yesterday. Folks, did you happen to check, if you were somebody who's given already, I don't know if you've been watching along with me, our Food for the Poor campaign? Holy cow. I just checked this out just now. Ready? $62K. Fast Eddie, we're at $62,000 raised for this wonderful organization called Food for the Poor. Our initial goal was 40. And now the question before us, with some time in this campaign, really inside of 1 week, from Monday to Monday, we got to $62,000 in a 7-day span. Now, I've been given basically the better part of March to ask you to give what you can, if you feel inclined, to help our friends at Food for the Poor. And I don't care what the amount is. I don't want to give you the impression that we were asking for the kind of donations some of you have given, but some of you have given $1,000 donations. Now, $100 for Food for the Poor gives one child meals, healthy meals for an entire year. $100 donation. That's one child. Basically, you effectively adopt and feed for an entire year through Food for the Poor. 200, 2 kids, and so on. Some of you stepped up. I can't remember who the first one was to kind of cause the avalanche, but somebody threw down $1,000 and said, I'm going to feed 10. And I said, well, I can't just let that kind of generosity go unrewarded, even though I know that's not why you do it. And so I decided to make my 3 times a week newsletter, which, by the way, yesterday was fantastic, incidentally. If you want to know more about Act Blue, which I've got that in the stack, and I'm going to get to that in a little bit, the Harump Society, I wrote and clipped extensively about Act Blue yesterday, so you can get all studied up on what it is and the front that it is, so that you understand all these hysterics about spending being cut. It's largely tied to people like Act Blue and USAID. So anyway, I get into that. But nevertheless, if you're not a Harump Society subscriber and you donate something like $1,000 to Food for the Poor, I said that's worthy of being a lifetime subscription to the Harump Society as far as I'm concerned. And so that's what I did. Little did I know that some 35 of you would come in with $1,000 donations to become lifetime subscribers to the Harump Society. It's just unbelievable. And again, that is not my ask, folks. If you got $10, $50, $20, whatever, couch change, give it to Food for the Poor, because they're going to do beautiful things with it. I have talked with these folks. They are the heart and soul of the Christian movement as you would want it to be. If you're a believer, these are the kinds of people you want to be your hands and feet, your representative at Food for the Poor. They do such amazing things. Now, if you can't give online at chrisstigall.com, that blue banner at the top of my website that says, what does it say again? It says Feed Their Futures. That's right, Feed Their Futures at the top of the webpage. If you can't give on that, you can call today. We have a number you can call right now, and they're standing by to take your donation at 855-330-4673. 855-330-4673. You can call and give that way. You can also text my name, Stigall, to 51555. Text Stigall to 51555 and give that way. Nevertheless, $62,000, and we're not done. I want to see just how high we can go. Can we get to $75K for Food for the Poor? Can we do that? We're going to see. We're going to see what you're made of. Like I said, everybody that does $1,000, you're a lifetime subscriber to the Harump Society. The very least I can do to thank you. All right, 855-STIGALL is how you reach us today. Back to the Elon interview. I thought it was just a fantastic conversation with Larry Kudlow. And I think when you talk about cutting spending, you have to understand this point. This point that Elon makes is the most important one. We played it last hour. I want you to hear it again. Number 956. Elon making the point of how much has to be removed from this government, which is going to cause financial hardship for people and the markets, because these are people whose livelihoods were propped up with taxpayer money. Take a listen.
There was a report issued by the GAO, the Government Accountability Office, last year. So during the Biden administration, which estimated the federal government fraud to be $500 billion. So just be clear, that's not a Trump administration thing, that's a Biden administration thing.
And 20 million people. Listen to 955. Listen to this fraud, just some of it.
Why are the 20 million people who are definitely dead marked as alive in the Social Security database? Why were hundreds of millions of dollars of Small Business Administration loans were given out to people aged 11 and under?
Exactly right. Exactly right. These are wonderful questions that need answers, but it's not going to be pretty while they unravel all of this mess, folks. We're so glad to welcome in the great senator from Tennessee. She's Marsha Blackburn, one of our favorites, and we welcome you back, Senator. Thanks a lot for your time jumping in here this morning.
I'm delighted to join you. Thank you.
You know, first of all, I just want to say that your work trying to codify Doge, and this has been my focus and point on the show today, is we're trying to get to a place where we codify this stuff. And, Senator, that's where Democrats do not want you to get. They don't want to get you to a place where you can codify this stuff for good. Isn't that what we're fighting at the moment? That's the obstruction right now?
It is what we are fighting. They don't want a continuing resolution. What they are looking for is a government shutdown. It would be a Democrat-led government shutdown. They're doing this because they're mad at Donald Trump. They are mad at Elon Musk. They're mad at Doge. They are mad that they're out of power. So they feel like that this is their shot to vote no and to shut the government down. What we're trying to do is get a continuing resolution across the finish line so we can say bye-bye to the Biden policies and move on to passing President Donald Trump's agenda. And the faster we do that, then, Chris, it is going to enable us to move to those reconciliation bills. It will enable us to vote on rescissions, which that's how we pass the Doge cuts and codify it with 51 votes, is doing a rescission package. And every time we do a reconciliation, we should be doing a rescission package. We should cut every ounce of fat that we can cut out of this. And those of us in the Senate are wanting to go beyond the $1.5 trillion in cuts that the House has proposed. We would like to move closer to $2.5 or $3 trillion or even more so that we get back to that pre-COVID baseline for federal spending.
So, Senator, when you say rescission, do you mean of this current? Because here, you're hearing from constituents. I'm hearing from this audience. They say why, and we just talked with Congressman Scott Perry, who says he's going to hold his nose and pass this thing. He gets it's full of garbage. He doesn't like it, but he's going to vote to pass it. You know it's full of garbage. This audience knows it's full of garbage. But why is it imperative to pass it to get it off the table? Why don't you take a swing at explaining that to us?
Yes, it is imperative to pass it so that we move the Biden policies to the side. This finishes up this fiscal year, 2025, and allows us to move to regular order of the budget process. Now we have those top line numbers, and as you know, Chris, you cannot cut spending until you get to the appropriations process. It sounds kind of backward and a little bit wonky, but our goal is to continue to cut. And as Doge and the secretaries are finding waste, fraud, and abuse, what we want to do is to put those cuts into federal statute, eliminate
So all
those
of this stuff, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, Senator, but just so everyone's clear on this, all of this stuff that we're hearing Elon is finding through Doge, you have the ability, you Republicans who control the House and the Senate have the ability, once we get past this CR, to make all of this garbage that's been found permanently eliminated from the federal budget. Is that about right?
That is correct. And that's what we're wanting to move on to and make all of these rescissions. That it's called the rescission process. And when you're removing that spending, and we are so looking forward to making the cuts, saving the taxpayer money, and passing President Trump's agenda, securing that border, rebuilding the military, reducing what the federal government spends, returning our standing in the world. Those are goals that President Trump has, and the Republican-led House and Senate share those goals with President Trump.
Last question on this, then I want to move on to something interesting you're doing in a new act that you've introduced. And that is, when this gets out of the House and to the Senate, what's the procedure there in terms of votes it needs?
We will have a 60-vote threshold, and this is where it's going to be interesting, as you say. I anticipate that we will have more than 50 votes that will be cast on to pass this. We look forward to that. We need to have 6 or 7 Democrats that are going to vote with us on this. We look forward to having their votes, but we also know Chuck Schumer is pushing for a government shutdown. That is what he would like, is to get a government shutdown. And what we're encouraging is for Democrats, rank and file Democrats, to vote with us so that we do not have a government shutdown, so the process can continue. But the Senate does have that 60-vote threshold that it has to meet.
Boy, I know John Fetterman has said he's in. I know Rand Paul has said he's out. So that basically offsets. So you've got to go find, as you said, several Democrat senators to join you. Are you optimistic? Have you talked to any of your Democrat colleagues offline about voting for this thing?
You know, I am optimistic. There are some who I think are going to break with Schumer. But Schumer wants another Schumer shutdown. He wants this. And he feels like it would hurt President Trump and it would hurt the Republicans, but he's just so wrong on this. You can look at any polling out there, Chris. The American people agree with the steps that we're taking to get this economy back on track, to secure the border, to reduce federal spending.
Senator, we had the detainment, and ultimately, I believe he'll be removed, Mahmoud Khalil yesterday from Columbia University. Not directly related, but I think sort of in the vein of the new act you've introduced called the No Immigration Benefits for Hamas Terrorists Act. I would love for you to explain it to us.
Yes, and what we are making certain is that there are no benefits that are going, no federal benefits that are going to go to people that are illegally entering this country or entering on a visa anyway, that they're coming into the country, that they get absolutely no taxpayer benefits. We think it is important that Border Patrol be able to vet these individuals as they are coming into the country and make a determination what their relationship is. We know that Mahmoud Khalil was employed by UNRWA, and believe it or not, and you have these affiliations and associations for people that are supporting Hamas or supporting these terrorist groups, and they are not in step with U.S. policy. They should be deported. I think Secretary of State Marco Rubio is doing a superb job working to make certain that people who are fighting against the U.S. and our policies are going to be removed.
So, Senator, when you hear people say, and I heard this a lot yesterday, even from some who I guess say they're conservatives, they say this is a speech issue and that this guy is not a threat. You may not like what he says, it's just speech, and we can't deport people because of their speech. What do you say in response to that?
To that, I say this is anti-Semitic activity, and I do believe that while there is a proper way that individuals can protest and can make their voice heard in the public square, what we see happening on these college campuses with this anti-Semitic activity does not fit, in that the violence does not fit. Fomenting
Does it also make it different, Senator, if I may? Does it make it different? It does to me, that he's a Palestinian and Syrian green card holder.
And yes, that he is here, and he has come in order to incite and to disrupt.
Yeah. Senator, I appreciate your candor on all of this. Bottom line for me on this CR thing. Do you think the vote happens today in the House? And then once it gets to the Senate, are you optimistic we'll hear a shutdown on Friday?
We'll have to ask our House friends if they are optimistic. I certainly hope that they are. We look forward to having it, and I look forward to continuing to work across the aisle to make certain that we have the votes that are necessary to pass this, so we can put an end to the Biden administration policies and move on to our DOGE cuts, codifying those, and passing President Donald Trump's agenda.
Senator Marsha Blackburn of Tennessee, always grateful for your time, ma'am. Thanks so much for it today.
Good to join you. Thank you.
All right, 855 Stigall is the telephone number if you want to weigh in today. 855 Stigall 784-4255. That's the part of this that I think we're not discussing yet, and that is if the kids in the House figure this thing out. Fast Eddie, you got to have 60 votes in the Senate to keep from a government shutdown. That's some tough math to get to. You're going to need the help of a few senators on the Democrat side.
Well, what was it with
and
Perry?
So,
Perry was saying, do we have anything? Are there anything that these senators won? A bridge named after them? What are we looking for here?
So Rand Paul says no. John Fetterman apparently has said yes. Again, they cancel one another out, basically. So you're going to need, what's the math on this thing? You need 6, 7, 7? Mm-hmm. There's 53 Republicans, right? You need 7?
Yes.
7? Are we going to get 7 Democrats?
Ugh.
You don't think so?
That doesn't look
So you
good.
think a shutdown's coming. And then what? So let's walk it out. Who do you blame? Who does the public blame? Now, look, you folks are very sophisticated. You people listening to this show, you know the way this works. You understand who's at fault, and you understand the game that's being played. The question is the general public who doesn't understand this game. Who will be blamed for this if the government, in fact, shuts down? Fast Eddie. And Schumer is banking on, the Democrats are banking on, being able to tell the American people the reason we are shut down is because of Elon and Doge and Trump. Even though we all know literally that's not true at all. The Republicans went to the extent of passing a crap bill just to make sure it got done. Just to make sure we got and kept the government open. That's what the Republicans in the House are attempting to do, and I believe they probably will get there. Do you think most of the public's going to be able to understand that? Can the Republicans explain this? The key is to explain, Ed. Can they explain it?
No, and Thune already had to be out there ahead of all of this, talking about it. Maybe on the Sunday shows, he should have been out there earlier than this. Some people listening, Chris, are hearing this for the first time about the 60 votes that are needed.
It frustrates me that this can't be simply explained. Now, I understand there are a lot of people that do not want to be helpful in trying to explain it. That's clear. There's a lot of media that doesn't want to be helpful, but we're in a new dawn. And this is the thing that frustrates me. I don't think we need to be clubbing guys like Thomas Massey over the head with threats. Let them be. Let people have their position. This is a message. Good grief. It's just, I get exhausted with it. It's about messaging, folks. Tell people the truth. They'll understand. You got to explain it better. I think it's important that we remember where we are here. Let's not lose sight of where we are. We're in the middle of a Democrat Party in total freefall and collapse. And here again, we're acting like we're on defense against a party that should be not only on the ropes, they should be knocked out. Van Jones is man enough to admit it. 948 here. He's confessing there's a full-blown internal crisis with Democrats right now.
The Democratic Party is going through a massive set of internal crises. You have a party that got trapped two ways. One, defending a broken status quo that nobody likes, because they thought that Donald Trump was going to make it worse. But when you're defending the status quo, you're going to lose. And then offending most people in the country calling everybody sexist and racist and transphobic and every other name, and then saying, please follow us. That's not a good strategy, folks. Defending a broken status quo and offending most of the country turns out is not as popular as my party thought it was going to be. And so it's going to take a while for people to get it figured out.
Why is Van Jones better at this than most Republicans? I mean, I'm sorry, that's it. Of course he's right. And on the same day he says this, the lunatic Whoopi Goldberg over at The View is saying this, 9:59. Listen to this. This is the point. Van Jones just said defending the status quo and offending most of the country is not a way to win. So listen to this lunatic rant from Whoopi.
Last week, California Governor Gavin Newsom said that he thinks that trans athletes competing in girls' and women's sports was deeply unfair. Now, I want to hear what you think.
The last time I played a sport, I was 6 years old, and I was on a soccer team, but I assigned myself as the nurse. So I sat with the Band-Aids.
I can't even. I'm sorry. I forgot to mention that the man pretending to be a woman who's now trying to make an industry out of being a woman, Dylan Mulvaney, who's written a new book, was on the panel talking about it. So they brought in a biological male dressed up as a woman on a woman's show to talk about why Gavin Newsom, the Democrat, is wrong for saying that women, it's unfair that you make biological men and women compete in the same sport, which, as an aside, so that's number one. Okay, number one, Whoopi Goldberg and the ladies at The View ignoring Van Jones entirely. Number two, what did I warn you about this Gavin Newsom podcast business? What did I warn you? Did I not tell you that he is going to now use this and use those of us that are willing to go on that little show of his as an opportunity to try to moderate himself and look like he is not, in fact, the lunatics that people like Whoopi Goldberg and the ladies at The View are? Gavin Newsom is trying to use us on his little show to look like he's softening and coming around and seeing the more sensible way. He's actually listening to Van Jones. So Whoopi is an example of not listening. Gavin Newsom, sly enough to realize they're on the losing side of this social issue stuff, and so he's starting to pretend to soften. And he's using some of us as guests on his show to do it. I disagree with that. Must I do everything myself, Ed? Let's go to Ian in St. Pete, Florida. Ian, I'm glad you called. Welcome into the Chris Stigall Show. Hi.
Hey, Chris. Pleasure to talk to you. I love the way you're filling the slot. I got to say, it seems like no matter what, the Republicans are always blamed for shutdowns and anything else. And I had a boss once that said the most dangerous person on the job is the one who says, this is how we've always done it. And I feel like we have so many Republicans that are still stuck with that mentality when it comes to dealing with the media and expressing ourselves. And it's a new media landscape. We have the control of it like we never had before. We have an opportunity for people to really hear us who normally wouldn't. The curiosity is there among the Democrats. They realize they've been lied to. We just need to take advantage of it.
Elon is doing it. I don't mean to keep saying Elon. I mean, he's not a flawless individual, and he may falter here, and I may have to call him out eventually. But Elon Musk is showing the way to that point, Ian. He's using a massive platform that he bought, and he explains on it daily. If you follow him on X, he's explaining what he's finding and what he's up to all the time. That's what Republicans should be doing, to your point, right?
People, yeah, absolutely. We need more people taking advantage of that, or even being redirected to that page to see what they're doing. Because every day, I have a few Democrat diehard friends left that are still holding on, and they try to give me the Elon nonsense, and I go, well, did you read go to their website for Doge and see what they did? They don't even know it's there.
Yeah. I think it's so interesting that you said Republicans defending the status quo. Remember what Van Jones just said, the clip I just played, why Democrats are having a losing strategy? They're defending the status quo. That's the point of this last election. You're so brilliantly framing it, Ian. You get it. The status quo has changed. We've changed the dynamic. The system, we've broken it. You don't need to do it the old way anymore. And 77 million of us see it. Trump sees it. These members of the House and Senate don't seem to yet see it. Ian, thank you very much for the phone call there in St. Pete, Florida. Telephone number 855-STIGAL. That's how you reach this show today. And boy, I tell you what, thanks again. Keep the giving coming at Food for the Poor. This campaign continues to impress, as this morning you've given hundreds more already. Judy in Philadelphia, Kevin in Warren, Robert in St. Paul, Dan and Dolores in Philadelphia, Mount Holly, $50, $100 from Brian, $1,000 from Joseph. It just keeps coming. You're helping feed desperately hungry kids in El Salvador through Food for the Poor with your giving. ChrisStigall.com. Click on the banner right at the top of my page, and you can do it too. Thanks for your support. Here we are, 2025. Happy New Year. And our friends at Gulag America are back and along for the ride. You know, they have been not only great sponsors, but they have been ride or die founders at the Harump Society. I'm so appreciative for our friends at Gulag America. I love the work they do. And we have every reason to be optimistic in this new year. They are, we are, all of us are. America's resurgence, it's back. Trump's back. And Gulag America wants to continue to be your premier source for topical and satirical apparel and other gear designed to help give you voice for your love of liberty and your desire to see America great again. I know we all share that in common. Gulag America does too, but that doesn't mean that the deep state's not going to be busy at work. They're not going to go gently into the good night, as they say. So Gulag America is ready. They want you battle ready. They want you geared up, and they've got hilarious stuff for you to buy, and they're going to give it to you at a deep discount to kick off the new year. You ready for this? You take 15% off all orders at gulagamerica.com when you use my promo code Chris15. So if you go shopping today and you see a shirt you like, and you will because they're hilarious, go to gulagamerica.com, type the promo code Chris15. That's Chris15. Type it in the checkout, and then you'll save big. Enjoy the new year. Enjoy new savings with that same quality, that same hilarious attitude that you've come to expect from our buddies at Gulag America, where they say, it's not our wish, it is our warning. It's been my pleasure and honor to talk about Bob Spinato at Williamsburg Dental in Broomall, just off the Blue Route, as my dentist and friend of over 12 years now. But now he has two brand new associates, his daughter Alexa and Dr. Geddes. Tell them about him, Bob.
Yeah, it's really a thrill for me to have both the dentists, my daughter and Dr. Jared Geddes. One of the things that I love about them both is when they don't have a patient in their chair, they're in my room watching what I do and trying to learn from me. And we hear enough about the new generation, and they think they know everything and they don't want to work. And I've got two dentists who are really, really want to learn and really, really willing to learn, to work hard. And I enjoy learning from them. They brought some new skills and some new technologies to our office that will be great benefits to our patients. And so, if anything, I think that having them both there is going to expand and lengthen my career as opposed to shorten my career.
Pick up the phone or go online, make that appointment, 610-353-2700 or williamsburg-dental.com.
Listen, we have got some great friends and sponsors of this show called Conservatives for Lower Healthcare Costs. Brian Lanza is a longtime Republican strategist. He also served as communications director for the Trump transition team during the first administration. He was an advisor on the first campaign as well, and he's now with this organization called Conservatives for Lower Healthcare Costs. You've heard me talking about them. And first of all, Brian, I welcome you in. Good morning. Glad to have you. I believe we got you on the phone this morning. Hi.
Yeah, good morning, Chris. Thank you for having me, and I look forward to being in Philadelphia in your show one day. But yeah, today we're via phone.
You're driving in the swamp today, so I
just passed the river into the Potomac, so I'm officially in the swamp.
Just give me your 30,000-foot view. With the Maha movement, RFK Jr. now fully ensconced, how important is this budget fight, do you believe, as we talk about the CR? I mean, I know, when you talk about Medicare, Medicaid, and a lot of people don't want to talk about that. Big Pharma is a major part of Americans' costs. How do you see that folding into what you do at Conservatives for Lower Healthcare Costs?
I mean, listen, every major budget battle here in the swamp is a big fight, right? Because Big Pharma, they're so big, they're so organized, they've paid for so many people that every movement for them provides an opportunity. That's why it's critical that we're engaged, that I'm engaged with this proud organization, because President Trump's commitment and his promise to the American people was cut down the costs. I mean, he was the first Republican to ever truly push that mandate in 2016. It's important to remember, in 2016, Republicans were, wholehearted subsidiaries of Big Pharma. And President Trump, came and said that's not right. And I represent the little man. I represent the forgotten man. And pharma has clearly stepped over those guys. So every opportunity that happens here in Washington D.C., whether it's a CR, whether it's a tax cut, whether it's anything related to revenue, big pharma always tries to flex its muscle. That's why it's critical that we support the president and his agenda, because at the end of the day, it's the people's agenda.
So big pharma is without peer in terms of, I don't know who leads in terms of lobbying on Capitol Hill, but big pharma's got to be right up there. Top 5, yes?
They are the big dogs. I mean, they cover both sides. They're bipartisan in trying to ultimately screw the consumer. They will appeal to Democrats, big government views, involvement in healthcare so they can manipulate prices, and at the same time they'll appeal to Republicans and say, hey, we don't want big government in our healthcare making these choices. We don't want them interfering in free markets. So I mean, they've co-opted both parties here in Washington D.C. I think that's the difference with Donald Trump, is they've never co-opted him. And in the first term, we had some challenges. We had some institutional folks in there. But second term with RFK Jr., they're not going to co-opt RFK Jr. And so with Trump and RFK Jr. sort of leading, being on the front lines and fighting to keep American healthcare costs low, that's a very powerful force, because that's a bipartisan force. And so for a long time, we've had a bipartisan. Go ahead.
Yeah. Brian, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but that's what I thought was so comical during RFK Jr.'s hearings, when Elizabeth Warren was shrieking about, you're an attorney and you shouldn't be getting rich off of these potential lawsuits with Big Pharma. I mean, you have to laugh at that coming from her, don't you?
I mean, there's a lot of reasons to laugh at Senator Warren. She makes a lot of, unsensical decisions. She clearly forgets, what her mandate is, and her mandate is the people of Massachusetts. And so she comes and does the heavy lifting for others. But yeah, I mean, I was watching the confirmation hearing myself, and the most exercised people of the bunch were the Democrats. And oddly enough, RFK lined up more on the healthcare related issues with Democrats than Republicans. But there's this thing called Trump derangement syndrome, where it just turns Democrats' brains into mush and they forget their core values. And the reality
Brian,
is go ahead, Chris.
Sorry. Brian Lanza with us. PharmaWindfall.com is the website, by the way. When people go to PharmaWindfall.com, I've been talking about this on the show, and I'm glad you can be here to explain it in more detail. If people actually go check out that website, you're encouraging people to actually get engaged here.
100%. I mean, there's no bigger cost in individuals' home budget than healthcare. So everybody needs to be engaged. Everybody needs to know that big pharma is the one that sets these prices. And my group, we fight to hold them accountable, and we fight to keep prices down. I mean, they are at all costs, every lever they can pull. Big pharma's here in Washington D.C. trying to pull it. And we need more and more people engaged in this fight, because we think their own healthcare costs is more critical than adding more dollars into big pharma's bank accounts.
The thing about this is, I want everybody to be clear that when you either you log on to pharmawindfall.com or you listen to this conversation, when you guys go at big pharma, pharmaceutical companies are not inherently bad people, but they're monopolistic, and that's the problem, isn't it? It's not that you're anti-pharmaceutical companies; it's that you're pro-free market competition, and that doesn't exist right now. Isn't that the point?
That's 100%. The one thing that big pharma, fights is competition, because at the end of the day, competition is what drives prices down. We've seen it, with McDonald's. We've seen it with shoes. That the more competitors that are in the market, the more the prices are going to go down. The difference with big pharma is they fight everything in their power that sort of that helps drive down the cost. I'll give you an example. Patent reform or patent abuse. It's pretty clear that for the decades, big pharma's been abusing the patent laws to keep costs high. And that's the one who suffers is ultimately the consumers. So if you look at their practices of big pharma, it's not that their business model is bad. It's that the only way they enrich themselves is by charging more at the expense of the consumers. And rather than just own that policy and say, yes, we're maximizing our profits, they're trying to push the blame onto other people. They're trying to push the blame on the consumers. They're trying to push the blame on the third parties. But everyday voters, people need to know that the prices of their pharmaceutical drugs at the beginning point, that's big pharma. They're the ones that are setting their prices, and PBMs are the ones fighting to lower that cost.
Brian Lanza with us, Conservatives for Lower Healthcare Costs, the organization, one of our great sponsors. And you can get involved in this conversation and read more about what we're talking about at pharmawindfall.com, pharmawindfall.com. Very specifically, I know about a little bit about compounding. I've heard from people in the pharmaceutical business, I should say, drugstore operators. The business of compounding, that is basically making a generic form of brand name drugs. Big pharma is hell-bent to stop that, right? It's so much more affordable for so many people. And as I understand it, the big pharmaceutical companies hate that idea of what's called compounding.
Well, it's competition. Yeah, it's compounding is a new word so they can hide the fact that they're afraid of competition. At the end of the day, we've seen throughout history the competition, makes the products better, makes it more affordable, and ultimately makes companies more responsive to their customers. Compounding and competition is something that the industry just doesn't want. They don't want to be, they don't want to be more affordable. They want their prices set, and they want people to pay those costs no matter what.
Brian, is it accurate to say, I'm sorry to interrupt you, is it accurate to say that there are many, many drugs that people are paying a lot of money for that could be made at a generic level for much less if they were legally allowed to do so? Is that fair to say?
First of all, life-saving drugs and drugs that can ultimately help everybody's health every day, yes. That exists. And it's scary, because at the end of the day, it's there is an initial point where the U.S. government helps start up some of these testings for pharmaceuticals, and then they abuse it, and they don't want to share the technology, and they want to keep the cost up. I mean, there's a reason they're the biggest lobby here in Washington, D.C., because they have the most to defend, because it's egregious, the sins that they're committing on the American people.
Brian Lanza, Conservatives for Lower Healthcare Costs. You can go to the website. Those of you that are watching on the Salem News Channel have been seeing some of the website. You can go and read more for yourself and get involved at pharmawindfall.com. Brian, thanks a lot for your time today. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much, and I look forward to being in Philly, and I'll keep an eye out for the Eagles here. We need to make sure that they all show up.
Please do. They're excited to come, they say. Wink. All right. Thank you, Brian. Have a great day. Our phone number, meanwhile, is 855-STIGAL if you wish to get in here today. Still to come, our friend and chief economist of this show, Steve Moore. I know that there are a lot of you in this audience who are terrified about the markets right now, and I get it. I am not trying to discount that you have taken a nosedive if you're somebody in the markets right now. I saw Tesla stock way down. Reddit stock is way down. A lot of individual stocks are way down. We'll talk with Steve about what that means and if he believes it's short-term or long-term. Are we headed for another recession? Trump says maybe. Sit tight. More of the Stigall Show in a minute.
Give yourself a harumph. Join Chris's newsletter, The Harumph Society, at chrisstigall.com.
Checking some emails today. Dana says, hey, Chris, I hear you on 660 AM in Granbury, Texas. Salute. Thank you, Dana. Glad you're aboard. How come USAID doesn't bring aid to Americans during tragic times? Billions of money goes around the world. Billions deal with hurricanes, tornadoes. Americans, I should say, deal with hurricanes, tornadoes, floods, forest fire damage, yet we never hear of USAID coming to the rescue there. Or is USAID just a cutout for government covert operations directed around the world? That is precisely what it is. I think you're smart enough to know that, Dana, and I'm glad you pointed it out. Let's see. Who else do we have here? I don't have the name on this one, but nevertheless said, Chris, Marsha, Blackburn, is my senator, listening in the last hour. Love her. Point you almost nailed. A green card holder is not a U.S. citizen. Well, that was actually my point. My point in mentioning, we're talking about the ICE arrest yesterday of this Columbia University student, Mahmoud Khalil. That's why I read to her that he is a Palestinian and Syrian green card holder who earned his master's degree from the School of International and Public Affairs, because of course. But that's not exactly where a terrorist sympathizer, agitator would get a degree. In the School of International and Public Affairs. By the way, he was living in on-campus housing.
And I saw a story, not for nothing. I'm going to put it out there and say I heard allegedly that this guy was tracked visiting the Obama residence in Washington. I read that secondhand from someone else. I can't confirm it. It's alleged. I am not suggesting I know that to be factual. Would it surprise me that a guy like this high profile, funded by groups like UNRWA, who would like to see Israel certainly and most of the West wiped off the map, does it surprise me that this radical is not entitled to anything? He's not entitled. You're not entitled to anything. If you're a green card holder, I'm sorry. Certainly not if you're going to work with entities that are funded to promote the desecration of a country, specifically ours. You're a hostile foreign actor. We've got to get back to the basics of understanding that being a traitor really does mean something. It does mean something. You know, we get very, very caught up, I think, sometimes in extending these constitutional rights to people who have immigrated here. And it's like, no, wait a minute. You can't come here and then spit all over us, speak hostilely, work with groups that have pledged Western annihilation, and expect us to just go, well, you know, First Amendment. Sorry, man. I mean, you got to draw a line somewhere. And I realize some absolutionists and constitutionalists and hell, maybe even the Supreme Court disagrees with me, but I think you got to, it's only common sense. It makes, I mean, for heaven's sakes, once upon a time, and I'm not suggesting we should do this today, don't misunderstand, but once upon a time in World War II, a Democrat president rounded up everybody who he thought might be sympathetic with the Japanese and put them in internment camps. I mean, once upon a time, that's the way Americans used to think in a time of war. And we really are in a global time of war. And radical jihadists, Islamo supremacists, they are at war actively with us all the time. They want mass destruction. They want everyone not like them to convert or be killed. And the severity and seriousness of that and understanding that is key. So you bring these people in, give them a green card, and you say, oh, they're citizens. They have a right to speak freely. Shut the hell up. I would prefer my women not covered head to toe with slits for eyes. I would prefer not to throw gays and trans people off of buildings. Rather, I would like to bring them to church and pray with them. That ain't the way radical Islamists do it, my friends. Sorry, it's time to talk about this and make it really uncomfortable. Radical Islamism has no home in the United States and should be given no quarter, and I'll be damned if we're going to use our God-given human rights as codified in our founding documents. I'm not going to extend that privilege to radical Islamists. Not doing it. Sorry, and if that makes me not as conservative as the next guy, so be it. But I'm not uncomfortable that I said it. I know there are a lot of you that are getting jittery out there. I hear it. I see it. I know. I'm reading it. Will there be a Trump recession? The Wall Street Journal's editorial board is asking. The CBS News giddily writing, Dow plunges more than 1,000 points. NASDAQ craters. So we bring in our chief economist to try to calm everybody's nerves a little bit. He's at the Committee to Unleash Prosperity, former economist at the Trump White House, author of the Hotline newsletter you can get for free every day in your email box at Committee to Unleash Prosperity. And he has written the book that Trump physically endorsed and even wrote the foreword on, The Trump Economic Miracle and the Plan to Unleash Prosperity Again. But your book, Unleash Prosperity Again, Steve-O, I guess everybody wanted it in the first 50 days because it doesn't feel like it's happening. In fact, Trump even said to Maria Bartiromo he's maybe open to the possibility of a recession. What is happening, Steve?
Hi, Chris. Well, I want to walk everybody off the ledge and make sure that people are calm about this because, if anything, nice buying opportunities right now. I mean, the market's down about 10% in the last couple of weeks, and every time we have a downturn like this, the market snaps back. So, and by the way, I'm not saying that the sell-off is over. We could see another few weeks of this. You never quite know. But I'll tell you this, that we inherited an economic mess from Biden, and we're just now finding out how painful the adjustment is to getting back on the right path. I mean, we had an administration that tried to build up the economy with massive amounts of government spending and debt. And we're trying to drain that out of the system. And there are going to be some economic strain in doing that. But I think if you look at overall Trump's economic agenda, it's extremely positive. I mean, we're talking about cutting hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars of waste out of the budget. That's obviously good for the economy. We're talking about deregulating, getting expensive regulations off the back of our businesses so they can be more competitive. We're talking about don't forget the tax cut. We have to get that tax cut done. We've got to make sure that American families and American businesses don't face a $4 trillion tax increase next year. All of these things are imperative. All of these things are coming. So there is clearly a bright light at the end of this tunnel, but I think the next 3 months could be a tough patch.
Is he making, in your view, a mistake in aggressively wielding tariffs? He goes back to an era where he says the country was once made very, very wealthy and our income was largely derived. Operational needs by the government were funded through tariffs. He points to that historically. Is he making a mistake wielding them so aggressively now, in your view?
I think so, yeah. And I know the president is kind of angry at me for saying that, but I think that it's, and even President Trump himself agrees that it's short-term pain for longer-term gain. If we want his history lesson, I mean, Trump is right that prior to 1914, 15, 16, around that era is when we adopted the income tax, which I think was one of the greatest mistakes our country ever made. Remember, there was no income tax for the first 100 or so years of our country. And so, look, markets don't like tariffs. I think I do agree with what your premise that what I would do, and my advice to the president is, look, let's get this tax cut done. Let's get this done and make sure that we have a really solid foundation. And then let's do the tariffs. And let's impose those tariffs after we get the tax cut passed. Because Wall Street, I think, is a little jittery, too, about whether this is going to happen. Remember, if this doesn't happen by January 1st, Chris, we're talking about the biggest tax increase in American history. So we've got to get that done. And then, in other words, I think the sequencing is wrong here. I think we should start with all hands on deck, getting the tax cut done. Then once we've got that in our hip pocket, then we should start talking about the tariffs. Don't forget, tariffs are taxes, right? Tariffs are taxes, and taxes are never good for the economy. But I do think, a more consumption-based tax system is better for the economy than a tax system based on taxing people on their work and their saving and their investment.
Chronologically speaking, this is why it gets back to, we've done now 2 days worth of shows on this. This CR that our friend Scott Perry, former chair of the House Freedom Caucus, and a lot of other Freedom Caucus guys are holding their nose and they're saying, okay, we'll support it because we got to get past it so we can get to what you just said. Now, the Senate's a whole other deal. You're going to have some Democrat help. I'm not optimistic there. They want to shut down on Friday. We know that. But if we can hit fast forward and get past this for a minute, and we'll get past it. We have this thing looming over our heads, January 1st, taxes increase dramatically on all of us, and Republicans can stop it. They can rewrite a new budget. They can rewrite a budget with dramatic cuts and tax cuts, but we have to get to it. That's why the urgency to get past this CR, correct?
I think you got it spot on correct, Chris, that we have to get the tax cut done, and then we've got to make sure we don't shut down the government, because that's just, and by the way, I'm the first one to say we're spending $1 trillion to $2 trillion more a year than we should be. We're running a $2 trillion deficit, Chris. I mean, so that's an enormous burden for the economy. But yes, you're exactly right. We have to get past this CR, which basically is just spending, at the level we did last year, plus a little small inflation, kick in. But now is not the time, given the fragility of the economy, to be shutting down the government. And there's nobody who wants to cut spending more than I do. So I say that as a strong fiscal conservative. And I'm glad to see that the people in the Freedom Caucus get that, and they realize that the disruption from not passing the budget would be bad. But look, here's the thing I want people to understand. All the things we've talked about, Chris, week after week, the DOGE recommendations of how you get rid of the waste, that's going to save us a lot of money.
Yes.
And all we need to do is make sure. My worry is, will Congress do it? Will Congress actually adopt these changes? Did you say there was a study that just came out? More than one out of every 4 people collecting Medicaid, which is the third biggest, program in our budget. One out of every 4 is a fraudulent claimer of that. So just getting rid of that fraud saves us $200 billion.
That's what I want everybody to know, and I don't think everybody understands. And I don't mean to speak down to anybody who does understand this. Don't misunderstand me as insulting your intelligence. Some people, right. I just don't know that procedurally they get it. When we get these announcements from DOJ, hey, we just found $600 billion of waste, that doesn't mean that it's not going to continue to be wasted.
Exactly.
That doesn't.
That's right.
You have to codify that. You have to make sure that's undone by law, and that takes Congress to do it. That's why we got to get to this.
Yeah. So there's a big legal dispute that the courts are going to have to decide about how much the president can do on his own. In other words, if Congress, let me give you just a really simple example. If Congress appropriates, let's say, $100 million for a program, and we find, hey, the executive branch, which executes the spending authority of Congress, let's say they spend, and we don't really have to spend 100. We can do this with 80 million. Does that mean the president should have to spend the whole 100 million? I say no. I mean, what kind of chief executive officer of a business would spend more than they have to because they authorize more of that spending? So that's a big issue of dispute. But you're fundamentally correct, Chris, in your analysis. These changes that DOJ are recommending, those are going to have to eventually be codified into law by Congress. So we're going to need Congress. And unfortunately, look, the Democrats are not being at all cooperative, right? They're disruptors now. They are, and I hate to say it, and I don't mean Democratic voters. I mean the Democrats in Congress. I think they're trying to cause chaos. Don't you? I mean, yes. You saw their behavior.
100%. They need it. They need chaos, and they need to make Elon Musk look like he's the one that's causing it all. Steve, I asked a rhetorical question earlier in the show. I know it's an obvious one to most people, and it was this: if I told you I could bring 20,000 government jobs into the marketplace today, or 20,000 jobs at a Honda plant in Indiana, or a couple of Honda plants or something in Indiana and Kentucky, which would you prefer? And I think most Americans would say, well, I'd prefer a Honda plant in Kentucky and Indiana over 20,000 government jobs. And this is, again, when you talk about the pain up front, I got a stack of stories here from the NOAA employees to federal grants that have been spent, the FEMA cuts, the NIH cuts. These are taxpayer-funded salaries. And it doesn't mean they're bad people. But you can't have an economy that's healthy, spending a ton of taxpayer money and paying a bunch of people salaries with taxpayer money while people aren't working. Trump's trying to long-term bring new jobs home for an economy that actually makes something rather than just taking tax money and paying government workers. Is that about right? But that takes time.
Well, I'd be even more extreme than you are. It is good for the economy. It's good for the economy that we're laying off government workers. I mean, we have way, way too many of them. I mean, how many times over the last 4 years did you and I, Chris, talk about the fact that the biggest, employment agency was government? I mean, jobs report after jobs report. Government leads the way in all the, hiring. So we were hiring workers in all the wrong places, and you don't.
It's artificial. In other words, Steve-O, isn't that true? I mean, from the artificial money we've printed to the jobs we've hired in the federal government, all the good news, if there is some, has all been largely artificial.
Yeah, it's like the way I put it is, it was like a house of sand we built, with all the growth coming from the public sector. And look, I'm not anti-government. Well, I am. I do understand that we need to have government. We need to have police, and we need to have a national defense, and we need schools. I'm saying that there was so much of this money that was just absurdly wasted. Where you had look, as you know, Chris, I live in the swamp. We had for 3 years, federal employees weren't even showing up for work, and a lot of them were working second job. They were collecting a full-time government paycheck, and then they were going out with another job and collecting 2 paychecks, and nobody was checking up on these people whether they were actually doing anything. The federal, these massive federal agency buildings in Washington, where I live, were empty. There was nobody there,
Yes.
and everybody was collecting full-time paychecks. That's a pretty good gig if you can get it.
And Elon did a sit-down with your friend Larry yesterday, a fabulous interview Larry Kudlow conducted. Listen to the 954 here, Steve-O. This is Elon talking to Larry Kudlow, 954.
As you mentioned, the bureaucracy is overwhelmingly Democrat. So Washington, D.C. was 92.5%, I believe, voted for Kamala. So this is overwhelmingly a deep blue situation.
Yeah, so that's also key to remember, right? That all these people you just mentioned, Steve-O, with about 20 seconds left, they're all Democrat voters.
Yeah. You know, it's so interesting. The left loves to talk about diversity. We have to have diversity. Well, the one thing we don't have diversity is our federal workforce. It is 90% Democrats, and so that's not a federal workforce that looks like America. You know what I mean?
Hey, thank you so much for your continued help supporting our friends at Food for the Poor, this wonderful Christian mission group that's been operating for years and years and helping feed hungry children all over the world. This month's focus very specifically are on the very needy children of El Salvador. And when we started this show and the Food for the Poor folks said they were going to come aboard, we had set a $40,000 goal to achieve for them by month's end, and you did that and then some in the course of 1 week. And now it has me wondering, it had many people wondering, what can this audience achieve? I don't know. I'm so grateful for your generosity. And again, whatever you can give is just a tremendous help to these needy children and these people in El Salvador who are trying to rebuild their lives under new government. This mission, really, truly the hands and feet of Christ, is Food for the Poor. They do just amazing work. I was on the phone with them last week, and they wanted me to convey to you very specifically, they thank you so much for your generous giving. Some of you are giving as much as $1,000, which feeds 10 kids for an entire year. You know, a $100 donation feeds one child for a whole year. That's what Food for the Poor can make work. $100 for a whole year. That's how efficient they are at Food for the Poor. If you want to give, whatever you can do. If it's $100 to feed a child for 1 year, great. Go to chrisstigall.com. There's a banner right at the top of my website. Feed Their Future is the name of it. Click on it, and you can give whatever amount you want. And leave your name and a note if you'd like, and I'd love to read it here on the show. If you choose to call and give, that's also fantastic. You can call their number anytime you want. You can text also, if you want to give that way, really easy to do. Text Stigall to 51555. Text my name, Stigall, to 51555. We'll send you a link that way. You can call 855-330-4673. 855-330-4673. I'm so proud to tell people that this audience is as generous as it is. And I see that ticker keep climbing just a little higher each and every day, thanks to your generous support. Some $1,000 givers, I tell you what I'm doing. Everybody that's able to do that, $1,000 give, I am giving lifetime access to the Harumph Society. I am waiving your membership for the rest of your days. You are an authentic lifetime member at my 3 times a week newsletter. That's the very least I can do to say thanks for your generous giving. All right, let's get to some good news, okay? It's been kind of heavy today. I don't know about you. I'm feeling a little, with the CR and the tariffs and the market and the whole thing. I know people are feeling a little down. First of all, here's what DOGE is doing. More NOAA employees to be let go, making 20% of staff cut. This is at the climate change, eco-wacko, we're warming the planet. Look, there's people that are studying the weather, and then there are climate activists, and I guarantee you that 20% of people cut are climate activists. They're not there to study the weather and warn people about hurricanes, all right? So good riddance. $128 million in federal grants spent on gender ideology identified under Biden-Harris. Top U.S. health agency makes a $25,000 buyout offer to most of its employees. This from Politico. Most of the 80,000 federal workers responsible for researching diseases, inspecting food, Medicare, Medicaid, blah, 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 and HHS were emailed an offer to leave their job for as much as $25,000. Now, of course, they're going to make every single government employee that leaves a department sound like they're the most vital thing ever. Our food will be poisoned and people will die from storms. No one believes that all of these government agencies are full of people stationed at the most critical life-saving positions. It's bogus. It's bunk. And it's high time that we start purging the ranks. We have to do it. It is not sustainable. You got to stop the spending. You've got to stop the hiring at the government level. This economy has got to get real. It has to be, this economy has to be built on the backs of people who have always made this economy work. Small and large business is what makes this economy work. People that provide goods and services into the economy, that provide people jobs, that lift people up out of economic poverty. People have got to have the ability to keep more of the disposable income they earn, not suck it out of their pocket to hire some bloated bureaucrat who is some climate change wacko or some, desk jockey in a cubicle at the Department of Health and Human Services. The dynamic's got to change, and it is. But it's going to take some time. It's going to take some heavy lifting, and it's going to be uncomfortable. And we must go through this discomfort as a country. We must. That means the market's going to have to dip because we're sucking all of this fake money out of it. We're letting loose of a lot of government jobs. But in time, and Trump's leveling some of these tariffs, which I know, again, and I got an email today, in fact, to this effect in Virginia. Let me see. This email came from Linda, and she said, with all due respect to Steve Moore, and I subscribe to his email every day, President Trump cannot institute tax cuts by himself. That's up to Congress. He can sign executive orders. So starting with tax cuts, in theory, is a great idea, but it means the president has to wait on fixing the imbalance of tariffs around the globe. That's Linda in Roanoke, Virginia. Of course, you're right, Linda. Congress has to be the one to move on taxes. Trump can't do it by himself. You're precisely right.
Hey, President Trump is moving at lightning speed in his first weeks in office. Executive orders, new policies, promises kept, and it can be hard to keep up. Until now, if you subscribe to the Trump Report, it's a daily email, and it brings you all the highlights from the Oval Office right to your inbox 5 days a week. Get all the details on the administration's top actions that day with in-depth analysis. Stay up to date on what President Trump's doing each and every day to make America great again. And be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss any of it. The Trump Report. Get it today at SalemPodcastNetwork.com/Trump. That's SalemPodcastNetwork.com/Trump.
So that's a wrap for another Chris Stigall Show podcast. Thanks for committing to it, listening to it all the way through. You're a fighter. I like that about you. Hope you'll leave it a 5-star review and a written review. Apple Podcasts, Spotify. We'll see you next time here on the Chris Stigall Show podcast.
The Chris Stigall Show podcast.